So let's give a round of applause to Jos.
Thank you. So we're going to misread the clock officially. And of course we're at FOSDEM, so I'm going to obviously talk about something completely open source with no shenanigans there. How many of you know Nextcloud quite well and are here for an update? Okay, that's pretty much everyone. And how many really are like, Nextcloud? I guess I'd like to know more. Okay, that's really just a few. Oh, class even, yeah. I'm happy to give you a one-on-one even. Yeah, it's essentially a replacement for Microsoft 365. So Teams, Office, OneDrive, the whole shebang. But open source and running on your own server. That's the short of it. And you're going to see much of the features in the next, 30-ish minutes. One thing I want to talk about very shortly is, so two features I want to quickly talk about in general. One is federation. So as Nextcloud is designed to self-host, that would mean you're all on your own little server with the 5, 10 or 5 million users in some cases that you have on the server. But thanks to federation, similar to what email does and also Mastodon these days and a bunch of other tools, you can work between people from different Nextcloud servers. So you can share files to people on the other server, you can have a video call with people from another server or a chat with people from another server, and it all feels like a single installation. So this is pretty neat. And the second thing is of course security, which is always important with these kind of things. Nextcloud has, well, the basic HTTPS, so when you go from your server to your client, I mean, you can say, well, it's a trade-off, there's still a performance impact, and sure there is, but I don't think anybody wants to send their stuff without any protection anymore over the internet. Still find it amazing that that was still a thing 10 years ago. On top of that, you can encrypt your data on storage in case you're, for example, afraid somebody comes in and steals your server at night. With Raspberry Pi, that's relatively easy. With a big server rack at a data center, it's a little bit less likely, but there is, of course, still a risk somebody breaks in. So if the data is encrypted at rest, that works when they break in. But of course, if they're in, you don't notice, and they can observe what's happening after a while. Encryption at rest is not good enough. You need end-to-end encryption for that, which means encrypting on the client. Turn what off? Oh, sorry. Please do. So if you're running an Nextcloud server and you have maybe a subset of data that you want to protect, even in case somebody breaks into the server, or maybe you don't trust the server admin, because you can run this at home, but you can also run this as a service provider, then you can use the end-to-end encryption, which basically encrypts the files on the client, mobile or desktop, so that then on the server they cannot be read at all. The keys are encrypted also locally and not, well, they're only encrypted sent to the server, and you have to exchange passwords manually between the clients to be able to have everything only locally accessible. Anyhow, what are we doing all this effort for? That is, of course, because we don't want to live in a world where these companies basically control our entire digital lives. I heard yesterday people saying that Europe is now a digital colony. It's not a really nice thing to say, but the oligarchy is definitely in charge, I would say. That's just a reality. If an American president would want to shut down the European economy because Europe doesn't, I don't know, lower its tariffs or stop selling cars or whatever it is they want, they can actually do that. And they might not do it, but that will then be because Europe gave in because of the threat. And that's, I think, not a healthy situation to be in as Europe. And obviously on a personal level, I don't want these guys to have my data, period. So there's that as well. So me, Jos, was already mentioned, so I'm just going to move on here. And the thing is, I'm going to talk about the releases we did last year. And, you know, we always do these release videos. They are 1.5, 2 hours long. We did about 3 releases. You can do the math. I have to do this in 30 minutes, so I'm going to go pretty quick. And I'm skipping a ton of stuff. So if you say at some point, like, hey, I'd like to learn more about X, Y, or Z, you can also just wave at me. And if I'm paying attention, which isn't always a given, I will try and, you know, help you out there. All right. So I have tried to group it a little bit so that everything is grouped by feature not so much by release, but I'm still going to start with things from Nextcloud Hub 8 and then mix in Nextcloud Hub 9, and of course that'll be also our special talk release we did. But let's start with Nextcloud Files. So that's the file sync and share with a desktop client, mobile clients, your documents, photos, videos live there. Yeah, easy to use. Of course, if you have, well, normal user these days have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of files, that can get a little overwhelming. But Nextcloud has a ton of ways to help you. For example, we will recommend some files, for example, that were recently edited or recently shared with you, just to help you find these files quicker. We keep track of relations between data. So if you have files that you're working on with a group of people, then when you click on one of these files, you will see the other files. But you will also see a chat room. You will see maybe a task that is related with these files, etc. So the different content between the different Nextcloud components will all then be visible there, and you can say, oh, you know, we have a calendar together, we have a meeting room together, and that is all then related to these files. In the left sidebar, you have your favorites, you recently changed files, and other quick filters, and new in Hub 8 was the personal file view that just sees the files that are completely yours and not shared by others, because, you know, especially if you live in a company, you have tons of data that is actually shared by colleagues and not really yours only. It can sometimes be helpful to quickly see that stuff. Now, there's of course another way to find files, that's a search. And you can there find, again, content from all over Nextcloud, so emails, chat messages, well, and your files. And of course, those files might even be shared in a chat room. Nextcloud has a video chat application, right, Nextcloud Talk. And that's deeply integrated with the rest of Nextcloud. So if you share a document, you can just edit the document and view it right there in the chat. There's no need to navigate away, open a tab, or download it and edit it on your desktop. You can just go and work on your files. And this also works during a video call, so it can be, well, a quick way to edit something. Obviously, you know, this is not where you write your presentations or big documents, but you know, for that you can open it in a separate tab as well. You can also insert files in deck. Is it playing? No, it is not. So you can insert all kinds of content. This is our lightweight project management app. And again, you can just insert a document there and you can edit it right in there. You can choose to view it as a link, or you want to see the full file. You can scroll and see the edit button and then go and edit away. So this tool that you just saw, the slash, and then it gives you a bunch of choices. This lets you also do other stuff. Besides inserting files, you can insert a link to a location on OpenStreetMap. You can insert an image, you can insert a video, you can insert tasks, you can insert calendars, you can insert chat rooms, basically all kinds of content from all over Nextcloud can be inserted in any of the places sought. This works in chat, this works in the task, this works basically anywhere. It's all. This is our notes app, but again, when you have text input field, you can put all kinds of content there. That works all over Nextcloud. Now, sharing is of course a pretty core part of Nextcloud Files. When you share, you have a bunch of options. You can add a note, you can, you know, hide the download option, you can limit downloads. That was new in Hub 8. You can also show a QR code. I never really understand why you want to have that on your own screen if you want to share it, but I'm guessing you can send the QR code to people or print it. Now, these were all things that changed in Hub 8, and I promised that I would mix in Hub 9, but the thing is Hub 9 made design change, so it would have been quite visible when it was Hub 9, so I thought let's first show that design. So with Hub 9 we had a new background, and we changed button and border radius, basically to take a little bit less space, make the interface more efficient. And that denser interface is very visible, especially in talk, because you can noticeably add more chats in the room and have so more messages visible. This is in Nextcloud Files, where we also updated a lot of icons and made the sidebar a lot more compact, and the breadcrumbs is more compact, etc. So I think this is nice for people who like to have a little bit of a denser interface. Oh, that was Nextcloud Mail, and I'm going a little quick. Same there, everything closer together. In Collectives, our knowledge management app, also improve the layout of the pages a bit. And of course, for those with a dark soul, like me, prefer dark mode, then, well, this is of course also available in Nextcloud. Alright, so one of the new things that we did are filters. I Yes, exactly, it does play. So you can quickly filter for specific file types. There's also on the top left a search, so you can also search, of course, by the words and find a file that you're looking for specifically. A lot of people have also been asking about a folder tree view in the sidebar, which we introduced now, so you can navigate your files and folders faster. Another cool thing, you can now also upload folders, not just files. And we added a file request feature. You could, of course, always send a folder to people where they can upload files to, but with the file request, come on, go play, we created a nice dialogue where, well, a non-technical person who finds this whole like create a public link and then make it possible to upload files, etc., who finds it complicated, you can just answer a couple of simple questions. Who do you want to send it to? Give an email address, and then they will get an email with a nice request that says, please upload the files here. And then later, of course, you will get notified when the files are uploaded, etc. It just makes the same thing a little easier to use. Tons of other improvements, but I don't have time for that. I need to get the Groupware. So, Mail app is, of course, designed to make your life easier, so you can do things like set a reminder for a mail. We have a AI inbox. We actually had that already 4 years ago or something. Before the whole LLM craze, so this is just a locally running neural network that gets trained on your emails and what you click and what subjects you like, what people you mail with. But we do use the LLM craze as well, so you can summarize emails. It will put little summaries in there. If you have a long email thread, it'll summarize it. Can suggest replies, and we have a pretty cool feature. I think that's in the next slide. I'll wait with that. We have S-MIME, signatures, encryption, all this stuff, and shared mailboxes as well. Now, so one cool thing we did for Hub 9 is that we created an urgent thing on top, which the LLM actually reads the email and decides if it might be urgent or not. Again, this stuff isn't perfect, as lots of online videos about all kinds of stuff show. But it can help you, make sure. And this also helps with reminders. So it basically, when it sees like, oh, get back to me next week, then the week after, this email is put on top of your inbox. So it'll automatically decide when emails need a follow-up. While, of course, if the email is just like, okay, thank you, then you don't need to follow up. So it basically filters out the emails where you need to do something with, rather than emails that are maybe just for your information or a newsletter, etc. All right. Well, we're at the calendar app, and this is connected with Nextcloud Talk, so you can, for example, insert calendar invitations and also see them in Talk. Another cool thing is that if you create a calendar invite in the calendar app, you can add a talk room, and then in the talk room you can see when the upcoming call is, for example. So this is also nicely integrated. But this is where you can share, schedules and stuff. We improved the filtering and search in mail a lot. It now supports C filters, so that means the filters actually run on the server instead of on the client, which means if you use multiple email clients, including the Nextcloud webmail client, you will have the same filters everywhere because they're processed on the server automatically, the mail server itself. Well, back to the calendar again. We worked a lot on the availability view, resource booking, that went a little too quick, room searching, so you can put in resources and then book a room or book, a projector and these kind of things. Quite nice in the company. And I already mentioned Nextcloud Talk. You can see upcoming meetings. With Hub 8, we included a global out of office. So this affects, of course, your email. But people who try to chat with you also will see a message that you're out of office until a certain date. And if they try to book a calendar meeting with you, then the calendar will also say you're out of office. So you don't need to put a blocker in, do your calendar manually. And your status also shows that you're out of office. So you only need to set this once. Now there's a ton more that happened, and I really couldn't make it very readable. But there's a lot of work that was done last year in Groupware. Office I'm going to keep even shorter than the other stuff. We developed this together with Collabora. Michael Meeks is not in the room, but at some point I'm sure you can follow a talk where he talks about a lot of the improvements they did. Of course, a number of things is done specifically for Nextcloud. The general performance and security work, etc., you can then get from Michael Meeks. One cool thing that we did in Nextcloud itself is support for filling forms. So if you have a document with forms, you can use the Nextcloud interface to fill in the form, and then you get the document. You can then still make changes, or you just get a PDF out of it that you can immediately send out to other people. So that kind of integration is quite nice. Now, I already talked a little bit about Talk. I'm going to dive into it a little deeper now. So this is for online meetings, video conferencing, and chat. It's effectively Zoom and Slack into one. So think of Microsoft Teams. That's effectively, of course, what it aims to replace. Scales to hundreds of participants. A call with 500 people, etc. is not much of a problem. You have mobile interfaces, Android, iOS, desktop interface. Features like breakout rooms, federation that I mentioned earlier is available for Talk as well. Essentially complete Microsoft Teams replacement. With Hub 9 we introduced a nice whiteboard. In December our desktop client became 1.0, so that is now officially, shouldn't this be playing? Yeah, officially stable. Ton of other new features. For example, you can now save a poll as a draft. You can even export it as a file, so if you do webinars a lot, my team does a lot of webinars, and then you can create polls, save them into a file, and then when you create a new webinar, you just upload the file with the polls, and then you can, you have then all the drafts, and you can just one by one just click publish, publish, publish. You don't need to manually work on that. So that kind of stuff is quite nice, I think. You can also invite people by mail or by public link, so you can send people a public link and they can share it with others. But if you invite them by mail, you can then see that that person with that specific email address actually joined. So again, for webinars, you want to track which of the people that got invited join. So you can upload a spreadsheet with email addresses, and then all these people will get a unique link. And then when they join, you can see, you can also in advance already make some of the moderator, for example. If they're a speaker, if they're a participant, you can then set the permissions for that already. And then later you can export the people who joined, so that you can see from the people who you invited which ones showed up. Now, thinking about it, I could have put this in the section completely at the beginning. I already mentioned a bunch of LLM things. There's quite a bit of AI features in and around Nextcloud that we've been implementing. But of course, we're making an on-prem, open source, self-hosted privacy solution. And so integrating ChatGPT wasn't exactly like top on our agenda, as you can imagine. So instead, we talked actually at FOSDEM a couple of years ago about AI and where we want to go, because on one hand, it can be helpful for some things, especially summaries. It doesn't hallucinate too much in summaries. And we thought, well, we want to bring those benefits to users, but again, we don't want to give up on their privacy. But the thing is, of course, you don't have a lot of options with everything. For speech to text, there are quite decent on-premises models. And already 4 years ago, we integrated Recognize, which will automatically tag your photos with faces and with objects, so you can search through them. And that was a completely on-premise running model. It was a gigabyte, so it was pretty big, but it worked on a CPU, and so that was nice. But when all the LLMs came out, we were like, okay, we need to think about how we're going to do this. So we came up with what we call our ethical AI approach. It's fairly simple. The idea is that each of the AI options that you have, think of ChatGPT or a locally running Llama, etc., and everything in between, gets a rating. And the rating goes from, red to green. And it depends on these three factors. So first is the code that you need to run the LLM and to train the LLM open source. Second, if the model is available, that means you can run it on premises, if these two are true. And then last but not least is the training data completely open and available. So if all these three conditions are met, the AI solution is green. If one of them is not met, orange. I'm sure you can figure out the rest, where it goes from there. So the idea from us is to bring transparency and to give you as a user a choice. So this choice is quite literal. In the interface, you will be able to choose which AI model, if you have a bunch of them locally, or which remote service, etc., you want to use. And then in our app store, you see the rating. We try and make sure that they're all transparent there, and you can then choose If you have a big beefy GPU and you have a nice local model, you can use that. And if you're not handling any critical data and you're happy sponsoring Microsoft, you can send your data to ChatGPT. So this way, there's choice. So we integrate in a ton of places. I already showed you a few things, summaries in mail, for example, but there are lots of other places. We already were using, neural network things, or experimenting with that. As I mentioned, our smart inbox, that is already done long before the LLM craze. We also did a suspicious login detection. So we're training on your server a neural network on your logins. And if you normally log in from 9 to 5 from the office and suddenly there's a 3 a.m. in the morning, a login from another continent, then you will get a warning and maybe we will block the login depending on your settings. Call transcript, so if you have a call in Nextcloud Talk, you can have it, if you have the recording on, after the call, you will get a transcript. You will even get a summary that is new in Nextcloud Hub 9. And then, will save you some time, of course, and you can search through your calls, basically, this way. There's, of course, a text generation, translation, dictation, all these features. So this is all under the name of the Nextcloud Assistant, also the old features. The Nextcloud Assistant is, well, obviously then a large language model based mostly, at least 100% open source and on-premise, so no data sent. If you use the local LLMs, right? As I said, this is a choice, this is transparent. Last year we basically introduced version 2.0, so that came with a complete overhaul of the interface, a lot of work on the back end, so you can now have a separate server dedicated for AI, so maybe with a GPU, right? So you split it up from your normal application server. The difference in performance between a GPU or a CPU for AI is, well, I'm sure I don't need to tell most of you, it's absolutely insane. So this is quite helpful. They came then with the summarizing of email threads, for example. We also introduced 2 features, context write and context chat. So context write allows you to basically give the LLM an example document. You can say like, hey, here's an environmental responsibility report. If you want to write one yourself for your organization, you give it the responsibility report from another organization. Then you give it the notes from a meeting that you had to discuss the state of environmental policies in your organization. And you say, use the meeting notes to write a report similar to the other one. And you have a pretty good start to get going. The second thing we did is context chat. So context write for you. Context chat allows you to ask questions about your own data. So basically all your documents, all your chats, all your data in Nextcloud is put into a vector database and you can ask questions. You can say like, hey, what is our internal process for organizing an event? And it will look through your documentation and make a nice summary of that. Another thing, it's not only able to look through your documents, it's also able to look for data in other applications. So for example, there's a Nextcloud application called Analytics, and in there you can, either via a spreadsheet or via an API, upload all kinds of analytical data, for example, weather data. If you're tracking weather data for you at home, you can hook this into the Analytics app. And the nice thing is the Analytics app can then let this get indexed by the vector database. So you can then go and actually ask a question from the LLM, and you can say to the LLM like, hey, what was the warmest month last year? And it'll look in the data and answer your question. So that's pretty neat. Also available on your phone, as I already showed twice now. So for the last 20 minutes, I've been showing you all kinds of features and abilities of Nextcloud, everything connected from apps in Nextcloud itself. But of course, we're a very big ecosystem with lots of other applications that we are integrated with. So if you say, hey, the Nextcloud Talk, it's all fine, but I don't need to be able to edit documents in the chat. I'm using Element, for example, or maybe you're using a proprietary solution like WebEx, for example. That's fine. You can connect this to Nextcloud. We have tons of integrations with these other solutions, and always working with good friends like XWiki and Open Project and Univents and lots of other cool projects together to make these integrations better and make it easier for you. And of course, because many of you are still stuck to this company, we also have integrations with Microsoft. I hope that this helps you migrate away from it, but still, it is necessary in many cases. So the apps for Nextcloud can be built as part of the core, right? Nextcloud is written in PHP with components in Rust and Go and other pieces. But you don't have to build a Nextcloud app in PHP. You can build a Nextcloud app in Go, in Ruby, in Python, whatever language you want. These apps would then run as part of a microservices architecture. They use Docker deployment, so you get distributed compute. And of course, this also can be a security benefit. So if you want to build a Nextcloud app in other languages, this is possible as well. Now, last year, we introduced one more big thing I want to talk about for a minute, and that's Nextcloud Flow. So Nextcloud Flow is essentially a business process automation engine. Honestly, quite boring for a home user. We have some automation features for private users too. But for businesses, this can be quite helpful. It can do a ton of things like connecting basically the different functions between Nextcloud and executing actions on it. So the reason we developed this was in Germany, like in many other countries, they're trying to automate processes as government, so that, for example, if you want to request a passport, not a password, that this is handled in an efficient way at the government. And to automate these processes, to be able to request this via the internet rather than having to physically go to an office and give all your papers and current passport, etc., well, they need to make a lot of changes and improvements, and Germany is really lagging behind in this. So are several other European countries. And all the automation tools for this are proprietary. So basically, as German government, if you want to automate these things, you either have to build something yourself or you buy from a proprietary vendor. And that's not great. So we thought, well, if you already have a ton of your data in Nextcloud, wouldn't it be nice if you can then use that data just directly from within Nextcloud to automate these processes. And that is what the integration of Flow was designed to help with. Yeah. So you can connect pieces from Nextcloud, like, I don't know, the Nextcloud Forms app. People fill in the form, and then that goes into the Nextcloud Tables app. Maybe a notification is sent to somebody to check if the content of the form is correct. You attach a file, etc. It can also handle like an incoming email. If there's a PDF attached to that email, it can take the PDF, parse it, put the content in the table, let a human double check it. You can even run it through an LLM for certain operations if you want. I would then definitely let a human check it. And then, for example, send an email back or send a ping to a payment system and then handle the payment, generate a PDF and send it out again. So all these things are possible within Nextcloud using Flow, all connected. German government said some nice things about that, which I think is really cool. And I'm going to close it here so that you also have some time for questions, if there are any. Of course, all of this, we're 130 people at Nextcloud. That's just a small part of our entire community of thousands of people. So for those of you who are contributing to Nextcloud one way or another, thank you. You made all of this stuff possible. In our next release, which is coming quite soon, there's really a ton of contributions, including some features I'm personally very happy with from community members. So this is not just a community, but actually just a company doing its stuff and throwing the code over the wall occasionally. We're a bottom-up community where community members have real impact, and personally that makes me quite happy. I think it also shows from the full dev room every year here. So yeah, thank you. Come to our conference, by the way. We will announce the dates, hopefully the coming week. It'll be in September in Berlin, and yeah, it would be really cool to see you there. And of course, as I mentioned, soon this is coming in just a few weeks, and there will be a ton of good stuff there as well. That's the end of the show. Any questions? Thank you.
You want me to take the so
no, I can repeat the questions. Okay. I can repeat the question. I think that's easiest. So, yes?
Not a question, but can you back which slide to display the German guy? Thank you.
All right. Yes, question.
You talk about federation of the servers, and I would like to know something more technical about the protocols or everything you want to do.
So it depends which part. So first, repeat the question. Yes, sir. The question is, can you talk a little bit more about the technical part of the federation feature? Yeah, a tiny bit, but I think a techie is from our team can go a little deeper. But basically, it depends on what you're federating. So for files, this is using WebDev and the Open Collaboration Services. So that's Open API. I think it also uses Open Cloud Mesh API. So this is standardized. For Nextcloud Talk, it's effectively using also the Open Collaboration Services API, mounting the room in the other instance. So you will get the room locally, but you're actually on the room of the other server. So the way we do federation, by principle, this both for the files as well as for Talk, is that the data stays on the owner's server as much as possible. So when you share a file with federation in Nextcloud, the recipient gets access to the file, but the file is not sent to them and stored on their server. Only when they click on download it or sync it, etc. So the file stays where it is, and the moment you unshare it, then they don't have access to it anymore. I think that's, yeah, a better model in some ways, for at least from privacy point of view and a control point of view, than like syncing all the data to all the servers, aside from the overhead that causes, of course. It's the same with the chat room, effectively. Yes?
LLM is very kind of hot topic. Can you share more details about the RAGs part of Nextcloud, how modular it is, and how it's built, and which technology you use, like databases and other parts?
So the LLM part of it. Well, we're pretty simple. So the question is, can you share more details? Thank you. I have the memory of a squirrel. Can you share more details about like the AI, basically, the integration with that? So, yeah, we're essentially we're not building our own LLM, right? I think for the speech-to-text engine, we did build a model using some University of Helsinki data, but of course an LLM running is not really a feasible thing. So we're basically supporting pretty much all of the models out there. I don't know exactly how this works on the back end, but we're nearly any model basically that you will find on Hugging Face, you can run locally and hook into Nextcloud. I think the best answer I can give you, I'm sorry. Yeah. Next question. Yes?
What's going to be your favorite feature in Nextcloud Hub 10?
My favorite feature in Hub 10. All right. One hint. I use Talk all day because I'm chatting with my team, etc. And while the universal search is really nice, it immediately searches in all chat rooms, documents, chats, emails. It's a bit much. And a community member actually basically built a very simple. There's a little search glass on the top right now, and you click it and you just search. You filter in this single chat. It's a tiny thing maybe, but it makes your life sometimes a lot easier that it just searches in one chat. And again, you can use it with the universal search. You can just say only this chat, but that is still 3 more clicks, and it's the little things that make the difference sometimes. Yes?
So server and federation, what do you do for backup? You backup containers or whatever? I mean, there's a lot of interaction between all the people using it, and then some hardware goes down.
So you mean the federation part?
No,
Or
in general, what's a single point of failure if you have a server-client architecture?
right. So basically, the question is, how can you run Nextcloud in a high availability environment? Yes, absolutely. Yes, because it's in the core. Although, as I said, there are some components in Rust and Go, etc. And Collabora, of course, is C++. So not all components scale exactly the same, but the basics of it is largely still very easy horizontal scaling because it's a PHP web app, and PHP means that every request that goes to the service is almost completely independent. So if one of the application servers goes down, you're good. If you run multiple, so that's pretty easy to do. Databases can be done redundant these days. File systems can be done redundant. So it's not really something that happens at the Nextcloud layer. But running a high-scale, highly redundant Nextcloud instance is not terribly difficult. Our largest instance has over 20 million users. they're not running it on a single Raspberry Pi. Let me put it that way. This is spread across data centers, across continents even, and yet it feels as a single instance to the users. So Nextcloud is, well, scaling is a solved problem in that regard. More questions? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about new features
Mm-hmm.
in 2024, but I feel there's also a lot of people that are complaining about this adding on more features, but I would rather see you focus on bug fixing, etc. So my question is, how do you handle that? Like, how do you decide between how much resources you spend on stabilizing the product versus adding on new features? Is that something that you have a special process for, or is that just happening spontaneously?
So our engineers have a lot of like decision power themselves. We structure a company very much like an open source community. So a lot of the decisions are low. So yeah, the question is, how do you balance features versus stability and etc. And of course there is a gray area there. Of course, when is it polishing an existing feature? When is it completely new, etc. By and large, often big features don't need a ton of people. For example, our AI team is about 2 FTE. So all the AI stuff that you've seen is 2 people. Yeah, and we're a company with 130 people. So, but this is very fancy, and we talk about it a lot because we're actually competing in a lot of these capabilities with, well, Apple, Google, Microsoft. And in terms of functionality, you can do that with Nextcloud. Of course, we're not building our own LLMs. That's not possible with 2 people. But we're standing on the shoulders of giants here, right? We're using all the technology that the people here at FOSDEM and many other people all over the world are building, and we're taking advantage of it. We don't do Office ourselves. We integrate what our friends at Collabora does, etc. So that's one part of the answer where you think like, oh, they are spending all of their time on features. Yeah, we do features, but this is not always as resource intensive as you might think. Yeah, we're reusing a lot of tech. Now the priorities that the engineers get, we try to basically just say these are the priorities. And the first is basically fixing issues, mostly for customers, but also from the community. So bug fixing is the #1 priority, and I would say 70% of the time is actually spent on that. Yeah. Optimization, performance, do you call that a feature? I didn't really talk about performance at all, but each of the releases had a ton of performance work, and that's also always very important, of course. It needs to be fast and stay fast. The second priority is then features, because we need, our customers ask for things. There are tenders that have certain requirements, etc. So if you want to keep hiring people and grow, then you need to also develop the features that are needed for new customers. And the third priority is, of course, working with the community, getting features from the community merged, reviewed, etc. So bug fixing is priority #1, effectively. But of course, I'm not going to list here the 6,845 bugs we fixed, because nobody gives a shit. At least I don't think most of you want to hear that, right? So I talk about the features. Doesn't mean most of the work goes in that. Any more questions? Yes?
Talking about government integration, how much adaptation is there already going on? Is it like, did you somehow just try to build a feature for the government, or are they already using it?
So tons of governments are using it. For example, and I always love this example, the European Data Protection Supervisor, so the organization that as an EU level supervises all the local data protection authorities, they're using Nextcloud, and they're recommending everybody to do so. So listen to your data protection supervisor, please, Europe. That would be nice. But I don't know, European, like many of them I cannot talk about. A lot of customers are twitchy about, I don't know, there's probably a lot of lobbying. There's a certain company from Redmond that has more lobbyists in Brussels than we have employees. So I cannot always name the names, but the European Court of Auditors, there are several parliaments, half a dozen ministries of foreign affairs, hundreds of cities in Europe use Nextcloud. But again, they don't make noise about it because, oh my God, if something breaks, then you have Munich all over. So a lot of it is under the radar, but we have thousands of customers, and we don't sell anything under a few hundred users. So they're all on the bigger side, so to say. Yeah? And that's federal governments, local governments, states, Schleswig-Holstein, thankfully, is very willing to talk about the use of Nextcloud and open source, etc. So they use Nextcloud all over the state, and there are many other places. Yeah. Yes. Next question.
Yeah, you mentioned community versus like a company.
Hmm.
Is there also some kind of governance model and processes that give an idea to the community how much their voices are being heard, and being implemented?
Yeah. So we don't have any. Repeat the question. Sorry, squirrel. The question is, how do you manage this community versus company balance? Yeah, it's a tricky one. So we don't have any formal things, at least not like from the outside in. I mean, we have a, what's it named? The name relates, well, there's a Frank, of course, but no, there's a group of people who handle like conflicts and such. I cannot think of the name. There's some kind of complainy board thing. But otherwise, like, our approach is simply to work in the open. So like, if you want to know our roadmap for the next release, I mean, there are boards that are in GitHub and that are completely open. All the issues are in the open. All the pull requests are open, and we treat community pull requests equal to employee pull requests, at least mostly. And I think by and large that has resulted in fairly little, friction, at least on a development level. Of course, when you say, well, how do you treat feature requests from home users versus businesses, that's a different thing. I mean, the businesses pay us money and the home users, of course, don't. So as management, we have to make sure that every release there is at least a number of things done for private users as well. Because after all, back in the day, we started Nextcloud because we personally care about privacy. And privacy is a thing people have, not companies. So if we want to succeed in our mission, we actually have to build features for home users, because you're the ones who we do all of this for, fundamentally, yeah, on a personal level. Hope that answers the question, and time's up. I have to leave it here. Thank you all very much.